of the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee held on the 28th of February 2024. We have Councillors Allison, Anderson, Barker, Chalmers, Clark. I'm just going to check if we've got Councillor Cooper. Yeah, we have Councillor Cooper. We have Councillor Dewar. I'll just check if we have Councillor Fagan. No, we don't have Councillor Fagan. We have Councillor Gowland. I'll just check if we have Councillor Hamilton. We don't have Councillor Hamilton as yet. I'll check if we've got Councillor Keat. No. We have apologies from Councillor Lambie. We have Councillor Lockhart. We have Councillor Loudon, Councillor Marrs. I'll just check if we've got Councillor McAdams. No, we don't have Councillor McAdams. We have Councillor Leslie MacDonald. We have Councillor McDougall, Councillor McGeever, Councillor Nugent. We have apologies from Councillor Razak, but we have Councillor Brogan here as a substitute member. We have Councillor Robb, Councillor Ross, Councillor Scott. I'll just check if Councillor Thompson's here. We don't have Councillor Thompson. We have Councillor Toner, and I'll check if Councillor Walker's here. We don't have Councillor Walker, and we have Councillor Williams. Have I missed anyone out? If there are any substitutes attending? No.
Gavin Keats appeared.
Oh, Councillor Keat has now arrived.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Keat, noted. Okay, and with that, I'll hand you back to the Chair. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Susan. Can I ask anyone with any interest to declare them now? Not seeing any hands raised, so moving swiftly on to item 2, the minutes of the previous meeting, pages 5 through 10 of the pack. Can I ask everyone to approve that that's a correct record?
Yeah, approved.
Thank you very much. We move on to monitoring items now. Agenda item 3, pages 11 through 68, and I'm going to ask Kirsten Allen to speak. Councillor Ross, on you go.
Chair, I'll wait till after the officer's spoken and then I'll come in with my question. Thanks.
Okay, right. Thank you for that. This is the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Strategy Action Plan Q2 Progress Report. Kirsten Allen. It's Adam. Over to yourself, Adam.
So the purpose of the report is to present the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Strategy Q2 Progress Report for 22-23, covering the period 1st of April 2023 to the 30th of September 2023. A bit of background on the report. The Sustainable Development Climate Change Strategy 2022-27 was approved by the Council on the 15th of June 2022. The strategy sets out how the Council aims to develop sustainably and tackle the climate change emergency over a 5-year period, whilst also providing a broad strategic direction for longer-term planning to help deliver on the agreed outcomes and contribute to achieving a longer-term vision. The action plan for 2022 to 2027 was approved at the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee in February 2023. Delivery of actions within the strategy provides the main focus for sustainable development activity within the Council and also enables the Council to fulfil its duties under the Local Government Scotland Act, the Climate Change Scotland Act and the Council's contribution to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Progress on all objectives, actions and measures at Q2 is set out in Appendix 1. All data and comments included in the appendix are correct as of the 24th of January 2024. Section 4 provides detail on the Q2 report. The Action Plan Progress Report comes in 2 parts. The first part contains performance and contextual measures towards the strategy's outcomes, and the second part contains improvement actions for each of the themes within the strategy. Section 4.2 provides details on progress against performance measures. There were 0 measures marked as red, and there was 1 action marked as amber where minor slippage had occurred. Where minor slippage was reported at Q2 Further justification for delay and associated management actions are included within the appendix. The majority of the performance measures were either reportable at a later stage or are contextual. The contextual measures are to provide a health check, and the Council's activities contribute to these measures. However, there are many factors that could influence these which are not fully within the Council's scope. Section 4.4 provides details on progress against the improvement actions. The majority of these are on track or are complete, and there are no measures marked as red. There are 8 amber actions where minor slippage has been reported at Q2. Majority of these relate to the revision of timescales for the delivery of associated plans, guides and strategies. Further justification for the delays and associated management actions are included within Appendix 1. Section 4.6 gives some information around some key achievements for Q2. These include the Climate Change Learn Online modules being completed by 1,364 employees since being introduced in 2023. 43 schools are currently holding their Green Flag Awards, with further 9 schools progressing through the assessment framework, and the Council's direct carbon emissions have reduced by 2.3% compared with 2019 to 2020, with the Council's indirect carbon emissions reducing by 38% compared with 2019 to 2020. In terms of some of the financial implications of this paper, the actions detailed in the Sustainable Development Climate Change Strategy and associated action plan are funded from existing resource budgets. However, the scale and pace of action needed to meet climate change targets and address the current climate crisis will require significant capital investment and is likely to require external funding and investment. In terms of the climate change, sustainability and environmental implications, the Sustainable Development Climate Change Strategy contributes towards the public sector climate change duties, the biodiversity duty and the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And then just to refer you back to Section 2 on the recommendation, the committee is asked to note the content of the Sustainable Development Climate Change Strategy Action Plan Q2 Progress Report for 22-23.
Thanks very much for that, Adam. Councillor Ross.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. My question relates to an item on page 21, and it's to do with the percentage of trips being made by bike. And I note here it says that for South Lanarkshire Council, there's no percentage of journeys made by cycle in 21, and the national average is 2%. And while I think that's very disappointing, I can understand very much the reasons why. As an active cyclist myself and someone who does use my bike to come to work, I know from the people I talk to that they will not use their bikes where they have to mix with other travellers using vehicles on road. And unless we get the infrastructure right, I don't see much hope of increasing this percentage. However, as a member of Strathclyde Passenger Transport, I was at a meeting last Friday, and I noted that the Scottish Government have increased the active travel budget from 31 million to 220 million, and that Transport Scotland launched an active travel infrastructure fund in late December for shovel-ready projects. Can I ask if our council officers obviously probably are aware of this, and do we have any intention of applying for us, or have we applied to this fund, and can I get a wee bit more rounded information on where we're going this year as far as this is concerned? Thanks.
Thanks very much. Yep. Over to yourself, Colin, for an answer.
Thank you, Chair, and thank Councillor Ross for that question. I think the kind of figures that are presented in the report there are concerning but kind of understandable. What I would say is a 0% of journeys been made. That's what's come out from that data set that was captured from the household survey. Now, the household survey is already a very small data set, and then when it's a particular mode within a small data set, it's probably 0.004 or something like that. What I'll share via the committee clerk is a website called USmart, where we, via Cycling Scotland, we've actually got counters on many of our routes. And you do see a lot of seasonal variation, and I'm sure as a cyclist, Councillor Ross, you'll be aware of that. cycling in the summer is somewhat different to cycling in the winter. So we are seeing positive increases across some areas, but you're equally right, and that's in location as well. So we've been doing that for the last couple of years, taking advantage of SBT funding. Certainly up until next year, there's obviously issues there that we're working through. We're aware of the various pots of money that's coming through. We're aware of significant increases that are coming as well. We have bid into these pots for next year, both behavioural change funds and also physical infrastructure. Some of the issues we've got, though, some of these pots require match funding, and if we don't have another comparable match funding pot, it's a bit challenging to get, but we are bidding for projects. In terms of what else we're doing, again, you'll appreciate the kind of distribution of settlements across South Lanarkshire are very much different to in the south than they are in the north. It's easier to get about the urban areas, and that's where to date we've been focusing. We are looking at kind of penetrating some of the kind of more rural areas with improved cycle routes and active travel. We've also got now across South Lanarkshire, fairly confident I can say every town has an active travel study where we've been out, we've engaged with the community, we've asked them what their thoughts are, what their barriers are. Very much their barriers are they're looking for dedicated cycling routes. So we know what we need to do. Now we just need to position ourselves to get the funding to do that. In addition to that, through our road safety programmes, we have bikeability, which we're encouraging kids to cycle at school. We've got the Beat the Street campaign, which we work with colleagues in environmental services on. And we've got a whole raft of other initiatives to encourage cycling. So we're doing as much as we can, but we do live in Scotland. Weather's not always great, and that can be a barrier that sadly we can't always tackle. But the money that's there, the funds that are there, we are aware of, and we're trying to make a difference. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much, Colin. John, do you want to come back in, or is that okay? Thanks very much. Councillor Clark, Ross.
Thank you, Chair. On page 30, it mentions a study being conducted by a PhD student into the impacts of climate change on South Lanarkshire communities. I was just wondering if we should expect to see the results of that, because it seems like a very interesting and potentially quite useful piece of work.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Adam. Thanks.
Hello. So yes, we have a PhD student with us just now. We don't expect the final findings of that piece of research to be available until 2027, so it's quite a long way off. We could certainly speak to perhaps a midpoint review presentation about where they're at. At the moment, they've just finished their first year, which is around background research, and they're beginning their second year phase, which is more around data collection. So yeah, we can certainly provide an update on that at a later date, but the full results won't likely be available until 2027.
Thank you. Kirsten. Councillor Robb, sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Thanks for all your work on this, everyone. On page 46, I'm interested in the work to look at South Lanarkshire's carbon footprint. I see there's a feasibility study being carried out by energy consultants, and I just wondered when that would report.
And
this is to meet the Council's emissions reduction targets and produce a route map.
And we'll go to Adam again. Thanks.
So the sustainability team are undertaking a piece of research just now, which will provide detail on the approaches of other local authorities in developing a plan and a route map to net zero. This will include looking at financial models for undertaking works to achieve net zero. Excuse me. This will also inform the Council's own approach to developing a plan and route map, which will follow feasibility work, which has been undertaken by colleagues in other services and resources.
Okay.
Do we have an idea of when that feasibility study mentioned on page 46 will report?
Can we bring in Joanne into that as well?
Joanne, would you like to come in on that one?
Page 46, and it's the second from bottom
Thanks.
section of the table.
Yeah, and sorry, Councillor Robb.
Yes, the report on that is being worked on at the moment. We would hope to bring it in the next cycle, but there's quite a lot of data attached to that at the moment, which we are reviewing and analysing. And not being an expert in all of the statistics around it, it's taking a little bit of time to translate the statistics into a delivery plan, but I would hope it would be available for the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Barker.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Really had two kind of comment questions, and we've taken them separately. The first is on page 25, household waste, which I think these figures are, well, very good. Really pointing out household waste, the percentage sent to landfill, down below 2%, which must be a real achievement. In the figures, we have got recycled, percentage recycled, and then percentage which still goes to landfill. So in between there, there must be a fair percentage that is, I suppose, not repurposed. But I take it, some useful purpose is put to that waste which is neither recycled or landfill. There's a big gap there, and it'd be quite good to see what happens to the, the in-between waste. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Kevin Carr. Oh, sorry, mic's disappeared. Do you push a button again and we'll see if it works this time? Ah, there you go.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Barker, for the question. So, members will be aware we've got a long-term contract with Viridor, and our residual waste, or the vast majority of our residual waste, now goes to an energy from waste facility in Dunbar. So the gap that you're referring to there, Councillor Barker, is actually the amount of waste that goes to the energy from waste facility.
Okay, Ralph, your other question?
Thanks, Kevin. So just coming back to the waste, a very large proportion of it is usefully recycled, even though it's not actually repurposed. Those are good results. Right. It would be remiss of me if I didn't go to page 41, if I can find there. And as it happens, I can't get 41. And it really is the action 3, Castairs to Kaluk.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I know the head of roads, is fed up of hearing me on this, but it would be remiss of me not to raise this as it gets, as a councillor, I can't hide away from a community. And the work that is being done in Castairs Village on the A70 is hated. And I'm not talking about through drivers. I'm talking about the very community that it was supposed to help. I would say it's dangerous, but I'm not going to go into all the details. But apparently there's been no fatalities, so it's okay. Okay, poles are knocked down relatively regularly because drivers don't see them for some reason. One vehicle ended up on his roof, but he didn't die, so it doesn't go into the statistics. It is not a council design. The council didn't pay for it, but council has improved it. And I really would hope that we would come and see what that community thinks of it. So I'm not talking about the lorry drivers, long distance lorry drivers going through it, the people of that actual village. So it really is a comment that if any councillor has this threatened on them, please come and see Castairs Village first. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I'm not going to pass to officers for a response because I don't think it's actually relevant to the climate change agenda per se. I think it would be more the community and enterprise resources that would be the right one to go with for that. So thank you very much. Although I do say obviously we take seriously the comments and the concerns, and it would be good to look into them, and I trust that will happen. Right, I'm going to go to Councillor Loudon. Katie, who's online.
Hi, good morning everyone. Thank you, Chair. My question's about something, it's page 61 of the papers or 44 of the appendix, and it's about the managing and monitoring the food waste pilot in school dining rooms. Excuse me. I'm pleased to see that that's sitting as a green measure just now. Obviously the pilot's been running in 3 groups of schools and that's currently being evaluated. I just wondered if we can get an idea of when that's going to be complete, when the evaluation will be complete, and we'll see the full results. Slightly cheekily, is there anything that can be shared with us just now? And is it anticipated that we'll be looking at a wider rollout after the pilot is evaluated? Thank you.
Thanks for that, Katie. Kevin Carr's getting an answer, I think. Sorry, the system seems to be a bit temperamental at the moment. Hopefully now it works.
I think that's us now. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Loudon, for the question about the evaluation. So, yeah, we're at the kind of final stages of the evaluation, and if I'm being honest about it, I think there's been some things we've done well with the evaluation process and some other learning points for us. So we've had really positive feedback from the pupils involved, from the staff and the schools involved. What we've found really tricky is actually quantifying the actual food waste from the start of the pilot to the end of the pilot and getting a true like-for-like comparison. So we're not completely confident with the data. So we've got good qualitative data in terms of the feedback, and what we're working on at the moment is for the next set of 3 schools, how we improve the evaluation process so that we're making sure that we're actually achieving what we're setting out to achieve. So, as I said, so it was a pilot, it's a learning process, and I think we're learning more from the evaluation and the pilot itself at the moment to make sure we get that bit right for the next time.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to take 2 further questions, one from Councillor Allison and then from Councillor Keat. Over to you, Alec.
Thanks, Chair. Just following on, first of all, 2 points. First of all, following on from Councillor Ross and the active travel budget. I'm also aware that SPT have lost all their capital funds for the next financial year, and therefore it is bringing a couple of projects within South Lanarkshire, namely the park and ride at Hairmyres and the interchange at Lanark. Obviously getting people onto the train would be a major benefit. Is there any way that these active travel funds could be applied for to replace the funding that the government's taken away from SPT? And secondly, point 4.6, very good figures of 38% reduction in emissions. But it's net zero that we're looking at. So is any work being done to see if there are any unintended consequences of the actions we're taking to get the reduction in emissions, and that we're not reducing any sequestration as well, so that we are genuinely heading to net zero? Thank you.
Thanks for that, Alec. I'm going to go to Colin Park for an answer on some of that.
Thanks, Chair. I'm just kind of picking up the first point. Yeah, the kind of projects you referred to, Councillor Allison, are at risk. We're continuing to discuss with Transport Scotland, Network Rail and SPT colleagues just what that's going to look like for 24-25. Unfortunately, whilst there are some substantial pots of money available for active travel, and we are bidding for them, the main works at both these locations are non-active travel. So it wouldn't be anything we could tap into. There are some surface street approaches, for example, up at East Kilbride, Hairmyres station, where an additional phase of the main works is to put in an active travel bridge, which will kind of span the railway line. That will follow on from it. So that wasn't already part of the main works now. So we are on both these projects, focusing mainly on Hairmyres just now, though we are looking at what contingency we can bring forward, if any, to deliver some or scalable elements of the works, but we're not there yet, and it would be wrong of me not to highlight that the projects are at risk significantly. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much for that. For the second part of your question, Alec, I'm going to go to Adam.
Thank you for the question. So in terms of the plan for net zero, we don't have a net zero strategy as yet, but that is something that we are looking at developing in future. What we do have at the moment is our climate change and sustainability strategy, and we are currently in the process of refreshing the action plan for that. So the actions within the next action plan will target many of the activities the council has undertaken that will take us to net zero, and more information will be available on that one at next committee, where we're proposing to bring the next action plan.
Thanks, Adam. Can we go to Councillor Keat?
Thank you very much, Chair. Not a specific question as such, just a brief comment to welcome the report, particularly in highlighting the work of our schools who have achieved the green flag status. And I know firsthand that isn't something that's just given. There's a lot of work and man and women power behind that, particularly from our staff as well as our children. And I look forward to meeting some of our staff and young people over the next 2 days at the Youth Climate Forum conference, to discuss their work and their future work. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for that, Councillor Keat. Councillor Lockhart's had his hand up for a while, so I'm going to allow him to ask a question, even though I'd said I was going to end it at that one, but this will be the final question. Richard.
You won't see my picture because my camera has died on me, so you can imagine me sitting here. I'm going to follow up with Ralph Barker's question only because I feel it actually brings a point up. I know it's not directly relevant, but we are here, after all, talking about climate change. And I think we have a lot of inconsistencies. And the point that he's making with regard to the village is one which I have permanently been bringing up in relation to climate change. And it's one of the problems I have with South Lanarkshire, who seem to have a complete aversion to speed bumps. Now, in the distance of Carstairs Village, you've got 6 chicanes, and every one of those requires lorries and tractors to slow down. Now, if you're talking about climate change and air pollution, that must be one of the most polluted 500 yards in the whole of this part of Scotland, because you're inconsistently applying the rules for climate change if you're allowing something like that to happen. And I just think there is little logic to it, and I think that it requires re-investigation. Not only is it dangerous and the villagers are all complaining, but in terms of climate change, it is close to a ludicrous contradiction with the actual direction we're trying to travel in. That's my point.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I'm afraid I appreciate the point you're making. I think it's very specific to one particular street, I believe, and I don't think that it's right for us to take this committee down a road where we start getting into street-by-street arguments around the right street layout. So for that, I'm going to direct you to the Community and Enterprise Resources team, who I'm sure can answer the questions in great detail and with some authority. And with that, I'm going to ask the committee to agree to note the report.
Agreed.
Thank you. Moving on to item 4, the Good Food Strategy Update for Q2, pages 69 through 94, and I'm going to invite Michelle Wilkie to speak to us.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. The purpose of this report is to update the committee on the status of the Good Food Strategy Action Plan and the measures therein as at Q2 of 2023-24, that's the period April to September 2023. Just to take you to the background at item 3, this outlines how on the 4th of December 2019, the Executive Committee approved the Good Food Strategy, which covers a 5-year period from 2020 to 2025. At item 3.3, we outline that the strategy sets out a number of outcomes and actions organised around 6 themes and 12 objectives, and they're all listed here on the page. At item 3.5, we describe how under the strategy there are a series of 1-year action plans, and we're now on the 4th year of the strategy, and the action plan covers the period 23-24 that we're looking at today. This plan is monitored using Improve, which is the Council's performance management software, and we report on this action plan on a 6-monthly basis, this being Q2 period. Item 4, we describe how the report is set out according to 2 main parts. The first part looks at performance, contextual measures, what can be known as quantitative measures, and the second part looks at improvement actions, which are projects. At 4.2, we begin to provide a summary of our performance as at Q2, and for the performance, contextual or quantitative measures, we can see that 55% of the 22 performance measures are on target or have already met their target. 45%, however, we are not able to provide an update at this time, either because the information is not yet available at Q2 or because the information itself is contextual. There's no amber minor slippage, there's no major slippage, so there are no amber or reds at this section. At 4.5, we then go on to look at the projects, and we can see that all 17 of the projects are on track to meet their target timescales. There's no minor or major slippage. At 4.7, we then go on to provide some highlights from the main report, which is the appendix attached to this Word document. So if we look at the first theme, the good food at home and the community theme, if we look at the first bullet there, we can see that we served breakfast, or our facility service served breakfast and lunch every day across a summer holiday project. That was provided by Education Resources. So that resulted in 4,500 meals served every day in those schools during the summer. At item 3, we say a bit about the unpaid work service, which expanded their service in that quarter. The food growing project increased in terms of size and range of the food products grown, and a healthy soup lunch is now being provided to all the service users within that service 7 days a week. At bullet 4, we describe how the Council has agreed to extend the financial wellbeing support for 2 years. So as a result, the Money Matters Advice Services have been providing £50 cash payments to people facing financial insecurity issues, including food insecurity, and that's been happening since October 2023. If we then go to the theme on good food economy, the third one down, we refer to the work of our Environmental Health Service. 95% of food businesses were compliant with food safety statutory requirements during that period. So that's 95% against a target of 85%. Moving on to the next theme, which is good food growing. This describes how we've increased the percentage of land used for food growing in that period. We've done that through the opening of the Châtellerault allotment site in summer 2023. As a result, the number of plot holders on council-managed growing sites has increased by 64. That represents an 18% increase compared to last year, and the total area for food growing has now increased by 10%, and there's a 99% occupancy level for our allotment sites. Finally, going to good food governance, we describe how the Council has made a successful application and has achieved Fair Trade Zone status. We've also supported the Fair Trade Education Award at the Scottish Fair Trade Awards ceremony in 2023. So these are just some of the achievements, with the remainder included in the appendix. I would now refer you back to item 2.1, which asks the committee to approve the following recommendation: that the 23-24 Q2 position in respect of actions and measures within the Good Food Strategy is noted. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Michelle. I'm going to ask Councillor Chalmers to come in.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you. Thanks very much, Michelle. It's good to see the work of the food strategy maturing. It really is. It's really helpful to have that detailed report. I suppose I'm just going to take you to page 82, so page 5 of the appendix. And, you know, just to note, really, with real regret, the shocking increase in our food bank usage. I know that we've consistently come back to this in these reports, that it really is quite upsetting, actually, to see the number of families that are relying on food banks. And I think, you know, it's April to September here, and obviously I'm even more concerned about quarters 3 and 4 and the outcome of that work. So I just wanted to really send a note, and hopefully, Chair, you would support this. A huge thank you to our food bank volunteers who have worked consistently, who don't just are there, most days of the week providing food bank parcels, but are there for all the special occasions and to reach out to folk who need not just food support but also help with fuel and other connections into other local community organisations for advice and further support. And also to the local businesses, because I know, for example, here in Blantyre, the food bank here gets donations from local businesses, fruit and vegetables and bread and pastries and all the other things that supplement the donations they get. So a huge thank you to all of those. And I know our community gardens are also donating food that they grow during the summers. And I just wondered, particularly now with the new allotments at Châtellerault, if allotments are connected in to the food network and are encouraged to donate where possible. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks very much for that, and I completely associate myself with your remarks regarding the tragedy that is people having to rely on food banks, and our great appreciation for everyone involved in providing that vital level of support. So with regards to your question on the allotments, I think it is great to see the 99% usage of the allotments. They obviously have a vital role to play. And anything we can do to raise the amount of supply going to food banks is certainly to be welcomed. I believe they are involved in that. I'm assured that's the case, and long may it continue. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Robb.
Thanks very much, and thanks for all the work on this to Elaine as well. My question is on page 72 about the waste analysis showing that 33% of the waste in residual bins are compostable. Just to see what else is being done or what can be done to encourage more people to recycle, or even better, compost this sort of waste at home. So reducing waste at source, which is the whole aim, is reduce, reuse, reduce is first. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsten. Kevin Carr, could you come in on that? Kevin, could you come in on that? Thanks.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Robb, for the question. It's a point I probably repeat pretty regularly here, that everything around waste, we talk a lot about infrastructure, but actually what it's really about is behaviour change. The composition analysis was done as part of the waste review, which we're getting to the end stage now and packaging that up together with some operational and strategic changes, but also a pretty major role for engagement and awareness raising with the public, because that's pretty stark. 33% of residual waste bins continue to be food and garden waste when we've got the infrastructure for the majority of properties in South Lanarkshire, not all, but the majority of properties are able to participate in that recycling scheme. So that's a significant cost to the council, and also we're missing a lot of actual recycling levels as well in terms of meeting our national targets. So when we start to package all of that up, we'll come back to Community and Enterprise Resource Committee, because a lot of it's strategic and operational. But there'll be a lot of hooks in terms of that awareness and engagement with the public.
Thanks very much for that. Councillor Ross.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. It was more a comment rather than a question for officers. It was on the good food growing. It was really to welcome the allotment site at Châtellerault, and the increase in the actual amount of allotment increase that we've had on council allotments throughout South Lanarkshire. These are not just food growing opportunities, they provide a much wider well-being situation for everybody that uses these allotments. The amount of joy that people derive from using them is immeasurable. And I'm really happy to see that we're managing to increase this throughout South Lanarkshire. And again, it does feed in to the last comment that Councillor Chalmers made about food banks and the chance to help in that situation as well. So I really do welcome the increase that we've had, and thank officers for the hard work they've done in trying to achieve this. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Ross. I'm going to go for a final question to Ralph Barker. Councillor Barker.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I do welcome this report, and one of the things I notice in it, there is no move to make this council a meat-free council. I'm sure all councillors have been approached on this. Yes, let's eat less meat, but thanks for not moving towards this meat-free status. Probably can't answer this quick. Just the state of the budget at the moment. Is there any possibility of the rural areas getting the food reprocessing bins, the burgundy bins, or is that something which we just have to look to the future for? Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Councillor Barker. I'm going to go to Kevin Carr for an update on that.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Barker. As we've discussed previously, there's an exemption in the current legislation for that. However, the Circular Economy Bill that's out for consultation at the moment, the Scottish Government's considering making garden waste, a statutory obligation, so that's working its way through Parliament at the moment. So I'm expecting, we'll hear back on, the Scottish Government's thoughts on that over the next year or so, so it may well become compulsory. But at the moment, there isn't any plans to introduce that to the 5,000 properties in Clydesdale that don't currently have the service.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Can I ask committee to note the report? Thank you very much. Moving on to item for decision, item 5, pages 95 through 198 of your packs. It's the Biodiversity Strategy and Biodiversity Duty Implementation Plan. I'm going to invite Joanna Birkin to give us the report.
Yeah, I'm here to present the Biodiversity Strategy and the Biodiversity Duty Implementation Plan. So the Nature Conservation Act sets measures to conserve and protect our natural heritage and places a duty on public bodies to further the conservation of biodiversity. And the Wildlife and Natural Act places a legal obligation on all public bodies to report upon this delivery of this duty. So we are facing a climate and nature emergency. Biodiversity has declined dramatically in recent decades, driven by 5 key factors: direct exploitation, development, pollution, climate change, and invasive non-native species. Centuries of habitat loss and overexploitation means that Scotland is one of the most depleted countries in the world, ranking 28th from the bottom out of more than 240 countries in terms of biodiversity it has remaining. In the last decade alone, 43% of species have declined strongly. So species are our building blocks of our ecosystems. Every time we allow a species to go in decline, we are progressively undermining the health and function of that ecosystem. Ecosystems are not only a fundamental part of our natural world, but also provide us with the essential basics of life: our food, our water, and the clean air we breathe. So species decline highlights the importance of restoring our key ecosystems and tackling climate change and helping wildlife withstand its effects. In 2022, a new set of international biodiversity targets were agreed upon in the UN Convention on Biodiversity through the Global Biodiversity Framework. To support the delivery of this, the Scottish Government has committed to a National Biodiversity Strategy, the National Restoration Fund, and putting into place legally binding targets to restore nature. These aim to halt and reverse long-standing national declines in biodiversity. Guidance from the Scottish Government states that we need to be nature positive by 2030, where there is more nature than there is today, and by 2045, Scotland's nature is well on its way to full recovery. So it is clear that the action is required to be on a landscape scale to achieve the national outcomes and targets for 2045 and beyond. Our priorities are therefore to work together to protect and restore nature, regenerate our ecosystems, to protect our most important nature sites, and to create wider nature networks so nature can thrive everywhere. So this is our 4th biodiversity strategy in South Lanarkshire, and it continues to follow in the previous plan, where there is a partnership approach to guide the conservation and enhancement of biodiversity in South Lanarkshire to 2030, to ensure a focus on being nature positive. It outlines how our local biodiversity contribute to national and global priorities, and how we can promote and protect the enhancement and creation of habitats, and facilitate a wider understanding and local importance of habitat and species. The biodiversity strategy continues to focus on an ecosystem approach to protect individual species and habitats by conserving the whole of the environment in which they are found. This not only benefits wildlife, but also the people through the maintenance of our ecosystem services. The strategy continues to protect our key 6 ecosystems, which are of great importance in South Lanarkshire. These are freshwater wetlands, lowlands and farmlands, peatlands, uplands, urban and woodlands. We have associated outcomes and targets, taken into 5 cross-cutting challenges, which are climate change, soil and geology, invasive non-native species, key sites, and people and nature. The strategy provides information on key issues relating to that ecosystem and the progress we have made since the last strategy. The strategy was written in partnership with the South Lanarkshire Biodiversity Partnership, which was formed in 1997, who have 6 broad aims to coordinate the biodiversity-related activities and identify gaps in delivery, bring together expertise and resources, enabling project delivery, create links between sectors and bring together those working on the ground with policy and decision makers, create new partnerships and explore new opportunities, raise awareness and promote biodiversity, and biodiversity is enhanced and better connected. Together we can work to create nature networks on a landscape scale. So to help facilitate the work of the partnership, we have created 8 subgroups, and they've been established to work on specific issues and identify relevant projects. The strategy has 10 strategic outcomes that have not changed since the last report, but they are broad and still linked to our national targets. These are invasive and non-native species are monitored and controlled, designated and locally important sites are conserved, people have opportunities to connect with nature, freshwater habitats are improved and preserved, the biodiversity value of low-lying farmlands improved, peatlands are protected and improved, urban landscapes are managed in a sustainable way, the urban environment of South Lanarkshire benefits biodiversity, vacant and derelict land contributes to biodiversity, and woodlands are restored and managed. So the overall vision for our strategy is that the future environment of South Lanarkshire consists of a suite of robust ecosystems which can adapt to climate changes without the wide-scale breakdown of local ecosystem services, habitat fragmentation, and species extinction, where we have a species-rich network of habitats abundant in wildlife is enjoyed and respected by people. So the Biodiversity Duty Implementation Plan, or BDIP, reflects the priority and outcomes within the biodiversity strategy and articulates how the Council achieve its duty to conserve biodiversity. The BDIP reflects guidance from Scottish Government and includes sections on governance, mainstreaming, nature-based solutions and climate change, public engagement and workforce development, and actions monitoring and reviewing. Implementation of the South Lanarkshire Biodiversity Strategy together with the BDIP will have a direct impact in stemming the decline of biodiversity assets in South Lanarkshire, and both plans will help to ensure the effective management of these assets, which hopefully in turn will help to improve the quality and richness of the local environment across all ecosystems. I've also written an action plan summarising report which highlights the outcomes achieved since the last biodiversity strategy and the BDIP, which is in 2022.
Thank you very much for that. Joanna, I certainly welcome these plans coming before us, and I think they will take us in the right direction. Can I invite anyone who wishes to speak on this item to let me know now? Thank you. First, I'll go to Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that report. I'd very much like to welcome this. It's very extensive. Obviously, it's over 100 pages long in these papers, and it provides a lot of context about how important this issue is, because we do need to take people with us, and part of doing that is explaining why these kind of things are very important. Also provides a lot of information on what's been done locally and nationally, and obviously areas which we need to go further on. We very much look forward to seeing its effectiveness, and of course scrutinising it to make sure it is effective as we go forward. And kind of questions in 2 parts. It mentions on throughout the paper, I know on 191 about the ash dieback recovery plan. It was just a case of looking for an update on this. I know at a community and enterprise committee last year we appointed 3 arboricultural operatives. Again, just an update on if those were appointed and how that's going. I know that was a fixed term, so it will be up at some point this year. Second part of my questions on 195, it mentions a bunch of measures and then targets for those. And a number of these targets have maintained on it, which makes sense if the baseline's already at 100% or if it's, report every 3 years. But particularly on the time spent by volunteers, there is actions elsewhere in the report to encourage volunteering in our communities. So it seems quite strange having, first looking at it, seeing a maintained target. Why don't we have a target to improve that rather than just maintain it? Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'm going to go to Kevin Carr firstly.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Clark, for the questions. I'll just take them in turn. So, as you referred to the Ash Dieback project, the service received around £500,000 in the capital programme last year, and that did allow us to bring in some new blood, so some trainees in the Arbor team, and their role was to carry out more survey work within the ash tree population. So that work's been undertaken over the last year. The funding also allowed us to bring in some contractors to deal with the more serious issues around the trees and purchase some new equipment. What the survey work has allowed us to do is create a better quantitative analysis in terms of where we think the decline is going over the next 10 years so that we can build a profile of costs and risk. We're getting towards the end of that full year of funding, so the plan is we'll bring that together in an action plan and bring it to Community and Enterprise Resource Committees in June. And what that will do is set out a series of actions that we think we can take to mitigate the problem, but also an idea on a profile of risk and cost for the Council over the next 10 years. And I suppose it would be remiss of me not to say that, again, this is a risk that is unfunded currently within the Council. It's a risk that all councils are facing. It's significant, and there isn't any national pot of funding that we can tap into to deal with this. So it's really important as that profile of work that we're building now that we're taking action to mitigate it wherever possible over that longer term period. But we'll bring that paper to Community and Enterprise Resource Committees in June. Second question was particularly around volunteering days. And I think it's a fair point. Again, there's a couple of constraints on that piece of work that's specifically undertaken within the Countryside and Green Space team. But I'm aware that there's much more volunteering, I think, that goes on across the Council. It's maybe not quite captured in that. So the scale, I think, is probably significantly greater than what's even included in the report. But one of the constraints is also obviously community capacity in terms of volunteering days. Second constraint that we've got at the moment just now is, well, members will be aware at budget last week, Council approved to actually reduce the number of FTE within the Countryside and Green Space team. So what we're doing at the moment is going through a prioritisation exercise. The volunteering element of that service is obviously one of the things that we want to maximise and prioritise, because I think South Lanarkshire as a whole gets a huge benefit in terms of maximising the amount of volunteering days that the community is willing to participate in. So that's an element that we will prioritise in the year ahead. But given that context, I think maintaining the level of volunteering days would actually be a success. If we're able to keep at that level at this time next year, I think that would be a success for the team.
Thank you very much. You want to come back in, Councillor Clark? Thank you. Councillor Robb.
Thank you. Thanks for all the work on this as well. Massive piece of work. I've got two questions. I'll just ask them one at a time. I've got a bad habit of asking too many in one go. So the first one is, how much is the Council getting from the Nature Restoration Fund this year, and what plans are there what do we want to spend on to benefit biodiversity?
Joanna. Sorry, Kevin, you want to come in?
Thanks, Councillor Robb. Now, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong here, but this year we 545,000 for this financial year 23-24. We weren't actually notified of that amount till July 2023 from the Scottish Government, so it was a significant increase from previous years, so it was a bit of a surprise. Given that timeline, I would anticipate it will be around about then this year before we'll be notified if we're getting the same level of funding. I would hope that would continue because, as you know, we've significantly increased the number of nature reserves that we're operating, so I would hope that that level of funding will continue, but I don't think we'll know until the summer period.
Do we have an idea of what we're going to spend it on?
So the technology technology again.
Yeah.
Joanna?
Yeah, the Nature Restoration Fund, we're in discussions. We have meetings with Grants and everybody, how we're going to spend that. So there's a few projects we've got in mind. In the previous years, we've used grant services to spend the money and keep on seasonal staff to work in our local nature reserves and improve habitats and structures within our local nature reserves. But we're looking at bigger projects this time and we'll just work on those improving habitats and ecosystems. So yeah, but hopefully in July we get the money.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll just ask my other one. Is that okay? On page 160, it talks about reviewing grassland management, which was a similar aim to the last biodiversity strategy. It was just to ask, is that going to be, what's the nature of that review? Is that going to be a strategic review which will also take account of costs, waste, biodiversity, carbon sequestration, amenity, etc.? Because it's a bigger picture, isn't it, grassland management? Or is it just going to be focused on individual sites?
Kevin Carr.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Rob. So we brought a paper to the last committee, I think it was, or the one before, about the Council's new approach to pollinators and grassland management and wildflowers. And that was the first time, I think, that we had really had a go at summarising the journey that we've been on and where we want to go in the future, because there's been a huge amount of work done over recent years in that, and we've hugely increased the number of sites. I think it's at 155 sites now, significant number of hectares now with pollinators. And when we were pulling that together in terms of a strategic approach, what we were looking to do is integrate more of that, the countryside and green space, and actually our grounds operatives. So we maintain about 11 million square metres, I think it is, of open space. And over future years, we want to align some of the work that we're doing through the NRF, some of the work that the countryside and green space team, but also the local grounds knowledge in terms of translating some of that open space into pollinator areas. The report that we brought had some good examples of some of the work that I know you're involved in East Kilbride as well. So I think that's coming round in terms of a more strategic approach rather than project-based. And again, it's just about embedding that over the coming year.
Yeah, quickly.
Yeah, that sounds good. And we saw just last week approving, we are not accepting cuts to reduce grass cutting, and I think we need to look at that approach again to make sure that we are achieving all the objectives and not just the neat and tidy but dead grass. We need to make sure we're a bit more savvy about all these decisions so that we get the biggest bang for our buck in terms of cost, biodiversity, waste, amenity and all that. So,
thank you. Councillor Barker.
Thanks, Chair. Again, welcome in this fantastic report, which is a really good read in itself. I particularly like references to my constituents that don't have a vote, the wading birds, and particularly the curlews. The curlews came back to the uplands just the other week. They always come with the moon coming to full. Curlews are endangered species across Britain and Ireland, so we're lucky to still have them here. We really do need to think about the future, because one of the main threats to curlews and other wading birds is predators, and we do have to address predator control. We can't have both. We can't have wading birds and badgers and foxes feeding off them all the time. The other concern about the wading birds is the uplands, our uplands, are now being covered in turbines. Now, I have never seen a dead bird under a turbine, but I would like to see some scientific research. Now we have so many wind farms, I'd like to see some scientific research on that. But as I say, I've never seen a dead bird under a turbine. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much for your comments, Councillor Barker. Certainly would be good to see details on that, although I've got to say that wind power has an absolutely vital role to play as well. So thank you. I'm going to ask committee to agree the report. Agreed. Thank you very much. Moving us on to items for noting. Item 6, pages 199 to 204, an update on the local heat and energy efficiency strategy. And John Smith is going to speak to us. John.
Thank you, Chair. Yep, so just to update on our local heat and energy efficiency strategies, as you say, the report is in your pack, and that's to provide the committee with an update on our progress on the local heat and energy efficiency strategy, so that's abbreviated to LHES going forward, just to keep you updated on the stakeholder engagement, the consultation that we have ongoing just now with the public and our community partners. So the recommendations are for the committee just to approve the noting of the progress that we've made on LHES to date, and that the consultation is currently live, be noted, and that we will be taking the final version of the LHES, the strategy and the delivery plan, to the Executive Committee for approval on the 26th of June. So just a bit of background, that the Scottish Parliament passed the Local Heat and Energy Efficiency Strategy Scotland Order in May 2022, and that order places a duty on all local authorities to prepare, publish and update an LHES strategy and a delivery plan. So the LHES itself, it's a long-term strategic framework for the improvement of the energy efficiency in buildings right across South Lanarkshire, for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions which are resulting from the heating of those buildings. It covers not just council-owned buildings, but all commercial, industrial, domestic and non-domestic buildings within the council's boundaries. It sets out how each segment of the building stock needs to change to reach net zero, and identifies strategic heat decarbonisation zones, and sets out principal measures for reducing buildings' carbon emissions within each zones. As I said, that this strategy, the LHES itself rather, comprises of a strategy and a delivery plan as two separate documents. The strategy in itself will identify the changes that are required to buildings and to local infrastructure which need to be carried out by 2045 to meet the government's net zero target. The delivery plan, on the other hand, is an action plan, and that enables the councils and our partners to work towards the delivery of the key changes that are identified within the strategy. LHES has been going about for a long period of time. The council have participated in two separate pilot projects, firstly in 2018 and again to test the methodology in 2022. So we appointed consultants in early last year to review the work that had been carried out to date and to work with us in the strategic partnership to deliver and create the LHES and the delivery plan. That work was completed just in late January this year, and the consultative draft of the strategy and the delivery plan have now been produced. We're not going into the specific details of all the strategy or the delivery plan in this report, but there are key sections identified under items 5.9 and 5.10 of the report. So the next steps for us are the public consultation, which commenced on the 16th of February, and that covers an 8-week period concluding on the 12th of April. Within that time period, there are a range of methods which our partners, our stakeholders and our communities can comment on the draft documents that we've prepared, and that includes an online survey, focus groups, discussions at partnership meetings, and quite a number of engagement sessions which we've already held with the likes of the Fuel Poverty Subgroup, the Tenant Participation Coordination Group, the Registered Social Landlords Forum and others. And just yesterday I attended the Lanarkshire Business Hub to present our LHES to that group. We've also got a few other sessions lined up with the Private Landlord Forum and with South Lanarkshire Council's Climate Action Groups coming up in March. For the members themselves, we'll be setting up a members awareness session and hopefully hold that during the consultation period to discuss more of a deeper dive into the strategy and the delivery plan with our elected members. And other separate meetings will be held with internal and external stakeholders. So following the consultation period, the strategy and the delivery plan will be amended to reflect any of the comments we receive and will be presented to the Executive Committee, as I said, on the 26th of June for approval. It's proposed that we'll review the LHES annually and bring updated reports to this committee. And the approach to the reporting of the LHES will ensure coherence and consistency in relation to the progress that's been achieved on the actions, and some of which are shared with the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Strategy. So it's right to bring it to this report, this committee rather. So just to summarise, just refer you back to section 2 and ask that the recommendations in the report be noted. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, John. Can I invite any members who wish to comment or ask a question to indicate they wish to do so now? Councillor Allison.
Yeah, I think the lease, if you like, has been very successful in reducing the carbon footprint, which is certainly welcome in the heating. A lot of social housing has been air source heat pumps that have been put in place of the previous heating system, which as a carbon footprint is very positive, but they have turned out to be very expensive. Is any account taken in the affordability in social housing for that type of heating to be installed?
Thanks very much. John.
Thank you, Councillor, for that question. Yes, when we go and explain more about the strategy to the elected members, you'll see that our main priority is a fabric-first approach to energy efficiency, thereby reducing energy demand. Unfortunately, electricity costs about 4 times the cost of gas, and our priority up to now has been, in terms of the methodology the Scottish Government have set out, where properties are already off the gas grid, they are the sort of top priority to convert to the likes of air source heat pumps. So we're moving away from fossil fuels, certainly from gas, but from oil, solid fuel, LPG and the like. So in those properties, we would be looking to make sure that we comply with the new Scottish social housing net zero standard, which is currently out for consultation. And the focus on that would be reducing heat demand, so making the properties far more energy efficient, and that aligns with our top priority in the LHEs.
Thanks very much. Alec, you want to come back in?
Yeah, to some extent, because it doesn't really address the affordability of air source heat pumps. And yes, improving insulation has been done, but it's not been effective in terms of heating costs. Has there been any other thought taken to perhaps what do you call them, solar panels on houses so that it reduces the actual electricity cost, because it is so much more expensive. So that we've heard earlier today about issues currently with the cost of living, and we seem to just be adding to it rather than trying to find ways forward.
Thanks, Alec. John, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, I could take that back up. Certainly there has been a pilot. Solar panels, or photovoltaic panels as we call them, that's one of the issues we're looking at as part of the LHE's priorities, or the LHE's considerations that the government call them. So we will be looking at that going forward. Unfortunately, the cost of electricity, as I say, is far too expensive in relation to gas, and the Southern Reserve matter to the UK Parliament, who are looking at that. They are looking at a lot of the green tariffs are put onto electricity, so they are looking at a review of the electricity markets, and what we need to do for the future of decarbonisation and electrification of heat is that the government themselves in Westminster need to look at how expensive electricity is and remove the taxation of what they call the green taxes from that. It's obviously something that's out with our control, but it is something that's identified nationally, and the Scottish Government themselves are pushing on that.
Thanks very much, John. Councillor Robb.
Thank you. A huge piece of work, John, and really good, and it'll keep you busy for a few decades yet. Really exciting piece of work, and I look.
Sorry.
That's okay. I look forward to having a good chance to get stuck in and read the LHEs as well. Because it is such a huge piece of work, are we confident that we've got the people resources, and how are we going to take that forward in terms of as a dedicated team, or continuing the cross working group that you've mentioned? Thank you.
Yeah. Joanna?
Thank you for your comments, Councillor Robb. It is a challenge to sustain this going forward, but one of the things we're doing just now, whilst the public consultation is out, is aligning the delivery plan to the activities that are currently ongoing. So quite a lot in the delivery plan the Council's already doing. So what we're doing is aligning that and having discussions with our colleagues across the Council to establish who's the lead in what areas, because a lot of this is not just about council's own buildings. Once we've done that, we will then be able to decide where's the best place for any resource to be. There is funding available, but we have not made a decision yet as to where that funding is best applied. It may be for an additional officer, but it may also be that it makes more sense to be someone else. But by the time we report to Executive Committee, we'll be making recommendations on that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor MacDonald.
Thanks, Chair. I hear what you're saying about air source heat pumps. What sort of cost is involved with, and in a domestic environment, to install an air source heat pump? And my additional question would be, is there any grants for both insulation and the installation of this? Thank you.
John.
Yeah, there's a figure in the consultation that's currently live regarding social housing. The estimate is about £9,000 per property. What we are hoping to do as part of our delivery plan is encourage and engage with private householders, with private sector landlords. The Scottish Government currently offer a grant of about £7,500, which isn't means tested, but top that up with a loan, an option of a loan through Home Energy Scotland. So a private individual could get £7,500 as a loan, £7,500 for a grant for their install. And what they reckon, again through the consultation document, is that approximately and it was Councillor Allison's alluded to that, when to make these things work better, the properties need to be better insulated. So of that £15,000, they reckon maybe about £4,500 of that would be on insulation measures. The council, unfortunately, don't get grants for that. We do, through some of our programmes, are able to access Scottish Government grants, which we can then apply on behalf of owner-occupiers. We have an Energy Efficient Scotland area-based scheme programme, and they did recently expand that. That was mainly for insulation, primarily external and wall insulation, and we've done a lot of that across the council in the last 10 years, primarily in sort of off-gas grid rural areas. But now that they've expanded that we can apply for funding on behalf of private owners for air source heat pumps and for photovoltaic panels.
Thank you very much. Could committee agree to note the report? Thank you very much. Moving on to item 7, Education Resources Sustainability Report. You'll find it on pages 205 through 212 of your packs, and Lynn Sherry is going to speak to it today. Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you very much. Morning, everyone. The purpose of this report is to update committee on the activities that have been ongoing within education since the last report, which was in February 21. In terms of background, if you go to section 3, during 2021, a fixed-term primary science and sustainability development officer post was created, and that was in collaboration with Education Scotland. Early 2022, a small number of our staff across education headquarters, they undertook corporate approved training to become what we call climate literate. And these officers have created a working group internal to education which meets regularly and picks up on linking in with other corporate colleagues in terms of council-wide initiatives and also education-specific initiatives, including Learning for Sustainability. In 22-23, we introduced a 5th key priority within our service plan, which was to empower learners to shape and influence actions on climate change and sustainability. So the rest of the report is a kind of walk through what's been happening over the last couple of years. I'll not go through all of the information in there, but just to highlight some. In section 4, that was about empowering the young people to use their voice. And as you know, in 2021, we established a youth forum on climate change and sustainability. It's chaired by the young people. And the main purpose, the bullet points are highlighted there about discussing and exchanging views, enhancing the reach of their voice, influencing change within the council, and also influencing the wider school community as well. During COP26 in Glasgow, the young people ran a news hub which reported on live events and current affairs connected with COP26. And over the 2 weeks, they ran 132 articles published on their blog. And that picked up on interviews with literally dozens of different activists, scientists and politicians that were around Glasgow at that time. In total, that got 20,000 views, and also they ran social media and received more than 1 million tweets, and it was something that was acknowledged in a motion to the Scottish Parliament as well. In October 22, the young people wanted to create their own conference of schools. They called it a COS1 event, and that ran in October 22 down at Hamilton Palace grounds. It was premised on P5, P6, P7 children across all of our primary schools. So we had 400 children attended, and they listened to different speakers and interested parties that came in and gave ran activities for us, and the young people also created their own presentations and ran activities based on the themes that bother them around climate change and sustainability. This school year, the forum really has kind of renewed its commitment. It's meeting far more regularly than it did in the past. And some of the bullet points there under section 4.6 describe some of the activities they've been involved in. They've been involved in a Teach the Teacher initiative, pilot secondary school recycling projects. They've been involved in a climate and nature event, which was held with Community Planning Partnership. In January, they launched an app called the Jump app, which they've designed themselves in collaboration with an external body. It's a 6-month pilot across 4 of our secondary schools. So the aim is really to encourage pupils and staff to take part in sustainable actions and to have them think about how they coordinate their lives in terms of food, travel, recycling, etc., etc. The last thing that's noted there, obviously, February 24, we're running a second COS2 Conference of Schools event, which actually takes place today and tomorrow, again down at Hampton Palace Grounds. This time it's focused on S1 to S3, and all of our secondary schools have been invited to attend that as well. Section 5 picks up on other things that's happening within education resources, monthly STEM newsletters, information sharing on training opportunities and classroom and project resources, etc. Good practice examples are also on our Padlet and our newsletter as well. 5.3 and 5.4, again, I'll not go through that whole list of bullet points there of things that we've been involved in. Awareness sessions for head teachers, schools' annual improvement plan. They're being asked to link some of that into the 5th key priority about empowering learners. The interactions with Keep Scotland Beautiful, etc., etc. There's lots of activities there for you to kind of note. If I could jump to section 6 of the report, it's around our next steps, our continued commitment towards learning for sustainability. Our head teachers in January 24, we had a forum, our usual kind of sessions, and our executive director had asked all of our primary school teachers that each one of them should select a class topic which must link to the climate change and sustainability agenda. Also, the document, which is called Target 2030, a movement for people, planet and prosperity. This is Scotland's Learning for Sustainability Renewed Action Plan, and that was officially relaunched, if you like, in December 2023. It's got 5 main goals. You'll see that in paragraph 6.3. A couple of them: all learners should have an entitlement to learning for sustainability, and in line with the new GTC professional standards for teachers, every practitioner, school and education leader should demonstrate learning for sustainability within their practice. There's more information in section 6 there, but when you go to paragraph 6.6, as a result of all of this, we are renewing our focus on learning for sustainability, and it will now be taken forward by central officers, and they'll form part of a suite of materials which will be available to schools to support their curriculum planning, including sustainability. And we're holding a curriculum conference in April 2024, and learning for sustainability will be a featured agenda item at that event. So really now, I guess, we're trying to scale up, and we're calling on education establishments to renew and increase their commitment to learning for sustainability. And we also aspire to create some of our own networks of teachers who could then support fellow teachers in delivering for learning and sustainability. Last point, under financial implications, it did note that the fixed term post for the primary science and sustainability post would end, the funding for that would end. However, we've secured some further funding until March 25, which will allow us to progress on our next steps. Okay. So really just to refer you back to the recommendations, just to note the content over the last few years, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much for that, Lynn. I want to say myself that the work that's been going on is great to see. It's not only in depth, but it is hugely broad in its base, and I think that's absolutely vital to empowering young people, as you've said, to meet the challenges going ahead. And also, one of the things I do want to say today actually is that it's really crucial to avoiding a sense of despair and falling into a trap of helplessness that I think we sometimes hear from young people in particular around these issues. It came across very loudly at COS1, and which I attended with the Chair and Deputy Chair of Education. I've been looking forward to attending COS2 as well. And events like that and all that's going on there, and the Teach the Teacher one as well, which I've noticed that I think are hugely significant. And I would encourage any elected member who doesn't do so, most probably do, but anyone who doesn't do so, to certainly get out and speak to young people in your areas and find out what they're doing, because it's something they're hugely enthusiastic about. And I think as well, as we go forward in the years ahead, the career opportunities for them that are going to exist in this sector are significant, and not only can they make their own communities a better place, not only can make their planet a better place, but they can do so while making their own lives better as well, so and giving themselves very positive futures. So with that, I'll just ask anyone who wants to speak or comment, ask questions, to indicate now. First up is Councillor Clark, so over to yourself, Ross.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that report. I'd particularly like to agree with your words, Chair, about engagement with young people. It's really good to see this continuous engagement with young people, rather than it just be every few years. 'Cause that's one of the fears a lot of people do have, that it's kind of the minimum level of engagement. But it's good to see this continuous level, because I've said it before, but I'll say it again. Young people are not only our future, they're also our present, and they can contribute to actions and scrutinise us right now, as has been said. Particularly on the Youth Forum, I know they presented to the Climate Change Committee. I think I would like to see, and I think we would like to see, that become a regular thing, perhaps annually, or however the Youth Forum want to work it, because they are central to this. Because as I've said, I think we'd really welcome that scrutiny from our young people of our own plans and actions, as the council and as elected members.
Thank you very much for that. I think certainly it'd be something that we would be willing to consider, but as you kind of alluded to, it's how it works best for them as well. So that's something I'd want to be sympathetic to. Lynn, do you want to come back in on that in any way?
Probably just to say that the young people really welcomed the last time they came to the committee and presented, and they are beginning to be invited excuse me, to more and more events within the council, which is good to get them a seat at the table. We are losing the chair and the vice chair of the forum this year because they're 6 years and they're moving on, but we have got some really keen younger pupils who I think would be itching to have that little slot and do their presentation and see if they can maybe hold the post of chair or vice chair. So, and I think they would be delighted at coming back, just finding the right time and the right topics to maybe bring to you. We can certainly arrange for that, yep.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Mars.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to make a comment and a question on 5.4 on page 208 of the pack. First, I'd like to welcome the report and notably the item on Beat the Street, with encouragement to leave cars at home and walk and scoot and cycle to school. Within that scheme, I'm wondering what consideration has been made of the maximum reasonable distances to actively travel before the education of our young people is impacted by tiredness, weather or geography. I'm also interested to know, given the impact of the proposal to reduce school bus eligibility, whether that proposal will be considered, especially in areas with limited public transport, will be considered statistically in terms of sustainability. Given the last comment, I do wonder whether one of the topics perhaps the Youth Forum could report to this forum on could be the view on the sustainability of the proposal to cut school buses.
Thanks very much for that, Councillor Mars. I think I'm going to address that myself, if that's okay, rather than hand that to officers, because the consultation is taking place. What I would say is I have huge sympathy with people in this issue. I think, to answer your question, I think it would very obviously vary child to child, young person to young person, and what for them is a suitable distance for active travel. In my experience, I lived 1.99 miles from my secondary school, and so didn't qualify for transport at that time. But it was relatively flat, and I was able to walk from about the age of 12 to and from school. So it will vary on local circumstances, individual circumstances, the type of roads that are involved. I hope people will be very active in taking part in the consultation and letting us know what they think. But certainly as that comes to light, I'm sure we will all be continuing to hear more and more about specific local circumstances and issues. It applies very much within my ward as well, so it's something I'm aware of, but I don't want to speak to that from this chair today. Do you want to come back in, Julia? Or,
yes, I do think it is important to consider what's reasonable. Whilst I absolutely applaud the aspiration to get to school actively rather than using a motorised vehicle, I'm also very mindful of the number of extra cars that could be on the road. And I think looking at that statistically is very important before any decisions made. So whilst I realise we would have sustainability impact assessments, they're given very few lines. So I think it would be important to consider that going forward at this committee and perhaps at education.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I do actually agree that is something that would be considered in the round of all the issues that are related to that, and that particular one on school transport. I don't see any further requests for comments. So can I ask committee to agree to note this report? Our final item on the agenda, pages 213 through 236, is Community Climate Action in South Lanarkshire, and I'm going to ask Adam Wallace to speak to us again.
So the purpose of this report is to update the committee on community climate action initiatives occurring in South Lanarkshire, which have been supported by the council. Section 3 provides a little bit of background to this. Recognising the public engagement is central to tackling the impacts of climate change, the Climate Change Net Zero Nation Public Engagement Strategy was published in September 2021, which sets out the Scottish Government's overarching framework for engaging people in a transition to net zero, in a transition to a net zero nation by 2045. The strategic objectives of the framework are to understand, to participate and to act. Empowering communities empowering communities to take climate action and be more environmentally sustainable is one of the Council's priority actions contained within the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Strategy. In recognition of this and to further the work in this area, in June 2022, the Council recruited a Sustainable Communities Engagement Officer for a period of 2 years to be paid for through the £2 million Climate Emergency Fund, and that was agreed on the 24th of February 2021 as part of the revenue budget. Over the 18 months in post, the officer has been involved in a number of initiatives aimed at supporting engagement on climate and sustainability. Key tasks have included working directly with community groups, liaising with partners in the Community Planning Partnership and the Community Engagement Team, and developing and delivering public engagement and communication plans. Section 5 provides some detail on a few key projects that they've been involved with. The officer worked with One Can Carluke Area Network COP26 Response Group to plan and deliver their first community climate event in March 2023. The officer facilitated a series of workshops offering the community the opportunity to contribute to One Can's net zero strategy and action plan. This project was actually nominated by the council for a COSLA Excellence Award. 5.3 as another project, the officer was involved in the Beeline to Nature project, which is a community-led initiative which in March 2023 was awarded over £500,000 from the National Lottery Climate Action Fund. This project is being delivered by a partnership of community-based anchor organisations across the 4 localities, and the project is engaging people in nature-based programmes focusing on protecting and enhancing green and natural spaces and creating a deeper connection with nature. Early project development for this was supported by the officer, who was instrumental in bringing the 4 project partners together. And the partners were Clydesdale Community Initiatives, Grow 73, Larkhall Community Growers and Healthy and Active. The officer has continued to support the project by promoting it to other community organisations, encouraging the development of a stronger, wider network. Additionally, the officer has provided a critical resource and a named point of contact, enabling the council to engage in the project activity being carried out. Lastly, they were also involved in establishing the Lanarkshire Regional Climate Hub, following the success of 2 Scottish Pathfinder 2 Scottish Pathfinder climate action hubs in the North East and Highlands. 4.3 million was allocated to expand the Scottish Government's Climate Action Hub programme to regions across Scotland. And in December 2023, the Rural Development Trust were announced as the successful lead for the Lanarkshire Climate Hub, covering both North and South Lanarkshire. The Council's Sustainable Communities Engagement Officer met regularly with the SCAN coordinator to support the process, and through the officer the Council is able to actively participate in the establishment of the hub by supporting the mapping of the network of existing network of climate focus groups, and informing, encouraging community groups and organisations to engage and participate, and coordinating partnership working between the Council and other stakeholders. While the hub is community-led, the Council will play an ongoing supporting role moving forward. And just an example of the work so far, the officer has been key in establishing early stage collaborative working between South Lanarkshire College and the Climate Hub. Appendix 1 provides a lot more detail on the case studies of community climate action which are ongoing in South Lanarkshire at the moment, and these are focused around the 5 themes of young people, biodiversity and conservation, sustainable travel, community energy and recycling and reuse. The officer has also been involved in supporting several council-led community engagement activities focused on sustainability and climate change. These have included consultation and support of the Local Development Plan 3, outreach with community organisations in support of local heating and energy efficiency strategy, the LHEs that was mentioned earlier. They've engaged with community asset transfer projects where these have related to sustainability and climate action. They've also supported focus group discussions on the collaboration in circular economy, and have been involved with community planning partnership where they facilitated the community climate and nature event last year. They've also helped administer the community climate emergency grants. In terms of communications, section 7 provides a little bit more detail. At CMT on the 26th of January 2023, it was agreed that climate change would be added to the list of permanent communications campaigns for the Council, and between February 2023 and December 2023, 178 social media posts and 29 South Lanarkshire View articles were published which had a focus on climate change and sustainability. Section 8 provides a little bit of information on next steps. This was a fixed term post for the Sustainable Communities Engagement Officer, and that comes to an end in June 2024. Just a bit of an update, that's been pulled forward a little bit. They've actually leaving us a little bit earlier now. Although that's happening, the Community Climate Action will continue to be supported through the relaunch of the Community Climate Grants, and it's anticipated that communities will continue to engage in climate action through the recently established Lanarkshire Climate Hub, which I mentioned, and Enterprise and Sustainable Development Service will continue to engage with the Climate Hub and other local groups to provide support. In terms of employee implications, the reduction in dedicated resource to support community climate action will see our work in this area significantly reduced. And in terms of the climate change, sustainability and environmental implications, continuing engagement with communities on sustainable development and climate change is helping the community and enterprise resource to meet its sustainable development climate change strategy objective to empower communities to take climate action and be more environmentally sustainable. So just to refer you back to section 2, the recommendation is that the content of this report in respect to community climate action initiatives is noted by the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Adam. And can I particularly welcome the decision not to use a photo of me planting trees, because it must have been very tempting, but frankly would not have been a good advert for what was a fun activity, and I'd encourage other people to join in, the volunteers locally doing that, because it was genuinely a fun morning. Can I ask for any questions or comments? Not seeing any. With that, I'll just say thank you very much for the report. We're moving on to, well, I agree to note the report. Agreed. Thank you. I have no urgent business, so with that, I'll thank members and officers for their attendance and participation and bring the meeting to a close. Thank you. Thank you.